Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming tonight. We have an interesting program in store, and Captain Dons has written a book, or at least his river columns in the Tribune have been compiled into a book, which I have read, and I certainly recommend to you. But I and my wife Carol are here tonight in the role of river mice. Now, I was told in high school when we had a speaker one time who was the vice president of something I don't remember, and he said that he was a vice president of thus and such, and that a vice president was a mouse training to be a rat. And having sat both of those chairs in my lifetime several times, there's some truth to that. And I might say that what river mice have as a goal is to become a river rat. And so we got in the business, Carol and I, with a steamboat, which some of you here are aware of, and some of you have been on. And at any rate, if you will look at the steamboat on the screen, you will see one of the things that we have done at Old Timers Day at Rabbit Hash. And you will see across the river from this little steamboat a big gambling boat. And Captain Don was captain of that boat at that time, and we would get kiddies of any age in the boat, take them over there and blow our whistle, and he would blow that big whistle on that boat back, and the kids were just delighted. So at any rate, without further ado, I would like to introduce to you, please welcome Captain Don Sanders.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate that. Okay. I'm Don Sanders, if you haven't already heard. Thanks for inviting me here to share my 72 years on the river. As the slide states, I'd rather be steamboating. But if I can't, then it's like Roxy from Pudd'nhead Wilson. You remember that Mark Twain classic? So aptly affirmed, if anything's better in this world than steamboating, it's the glory got to be about telling about it. If y'all will look at the slide, you may recognize that piece of ground in the background. That's Boone County, right above Rabbit Hash. That's Troy and Polly Chandler's place, right there, you see it? Mm-hmm. And that used to be my mom and dad's place. So in many ways, I could say that I'm from Rabbit Hash, at least part of it. Yeah. The river was a scary, frightening environment when I was a little boy, especially whenever my parents, Jess and Anna Margaret, and I rode on the Coney Island steamer the second Island Queen. Anybody else rode the Island Queen? 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. It's a great boat. Who were those strange old men rustling about inside the pilot house? It could have been Captain Ben I. Patterson on the left and Harry W. Doss. Many years later, I worked with Captain Doss on the steamer Avalon, where he and my dad enjoyed the mutual conversations in the pilot house. Around a long time, they call him Wes Doss. In fact, the old timers call him Young Wes. My mother, Anna Margaret, insisted on riding on those hard wooden benches behind the pilot house. Note the Delta Queen in the distance. Got my little laser there. Is that showing off there? Yeah. Anyway, that's the Delta Queen back there. In the distance, wearing her navy gray paint. The Queen had just arrived in Cincinnati from California before heading to Pittsburgh for a complete overhaul. The photo was snapped in late summer 1947. That's not my mother. That's the lady from Down Horizons, Aurora. Not long before the Island Queen exploded and burned at the foot of Wood Street, Pittsburgh, on the 9th of September, not too distant from where the Delta Queen was dry docked at the Dravaux shipyard. She did a complete overhaul on her. I remember when she blew up, and everything was on the radio. It wasn't on TV. We didn't have any TV. They blew that awful whistle. I was terrified, and that's the truth. I didn't think the river was the place I wanted to be. The world changed drastically for me in 1952. My grandfather, Jesse Sanders Jr., Senior, and I together were he was, among other things, the first police officer at the then Boone County Airport. He is recorded on the police seniority list there as officer number 001. As a boy, I had nearly the complete run of the airport. I went everywhere except for the tower and the flight line. They know me, and I'd go over to the big hangar, it was there in World War II. They repaired those big airplanes. American Airlines had it, and big wooden contraption. Went everywhere. It was just like, I partially grew up there. I had quite an adventure there. Grandma Edith was the airport's first concessionaire. Her refreshment stand was this little white structure situated away from the terminal. If the terminal was here, it was over there. And if you wanted a cool, refreshing drink in the terminal, you had to go out and go to Grandma's stand. I saw in the Boone County website, the day of the Historical Society, that was the Boone County Airlines before that. Anybody remember?
Correct.
And then when that folded up in the late 40s, Dobbs House made it into this refreshment stand. Get a pronto pup for 25 cents, which was a lot of money in those days. We also moved that year to our new home, so close to the Licking River, that it enabled my brothers and I to develop an intimate relationship with an ancient stream that continues to this day, some 69 years after our unexpected introduction to those forbidden waters. In fact, Sunday is May 19th. And May 19th, 1955, it's in the book, we were driven over there by some mean kids. And when we finally looked around, we thought we were in paradise. Also that year, Walter Hoffmeyer, old river rat, a friend of my father's, introduced me to the river aboard his houseboat, the Palomine. What I soon learned from Walt was that if I demonstrated my willingness to work and to help with the boat, he reciprocated by teaching me more about the operation and care of his vessel, as well as sharing secrets of a river upon which he was born, grew up, and was growing old. Overall, the Palomine measured 52 feet from the overhanging forward deck, beyond the stem, forward, to the last plank of the enclosed back deck. A raised bow, stern sections, and a lower center compartment of the cabin gave the PAL somewhat the look of a floating castle, or at least it seemed to a 10-year-old boy on that first seeing it afloat. After Walt started Walt's Boat Club, a marina at the end of the flood wall in West Covington, not far from Herb Flerley Marine, I worked there every day after school and on the weekends. My daily pay was one of Lorraine's deliciously prepared suppers. I asked the old man one day, "How much you gonna pay me?" He says, "Pay you hell." He says, "You're getting your supper, ain't you?" I'll tell you, it was worth it just to be away from the house and be down on my own with water and then that river life. My life on the river was rarely recreational like this. My memories of the river isn't a rubber raft and floating and beach balls and motor boats like that. It was work. It was work. My family was invited to ride the Palomine nearly every weekend for 3 consecutive seasons. My brothers, Dick, Bob, and I were becoming seasoned river boys, something that did not escape the notice of our parents. Soon my folks began a search for our own boat. On the banks of the Great Miami River near Hamilton, Ohio, only 35 miles from Cincinnati, northern Kentucky, where repeated visits to the Hamilton Boat Club netted the grand prize, the most lovely 38-foot paddle wheeler named the Shangri-La. Once all the preliminaries were completed, my folks brought the little stern paddle wheeler overland by flatbed trailer to the Cincinnati Public Landing. Dad soon found out that the cobblestone grade over on the public landing did not gently taper down to the bottom. I bet you'd be surprised about that, Mike. It went down and dropped off at about a 4 or 5 foot bluff at the end of the cobblestones. The tractor trailer wheels hung up on that unexpected drop off at the end of the pavement. The driver tried to get rough with my dad about preventing damage to his rig by sacrificing our lovely boat. But Dad, being a police officer and a big guy, 6'1", 210 or 15 pounds, insisted that they work together and find a successful solution. And I think my dad's wording would have been a little different than mine. With the help of the driver and friends of my father, who volunteered, the former Shangri-La was launched with only a slight hurt to the port paddle wheel support timber. The paddle wheeler bobbed calmly on the outboard side of the dock at the Covington Boat Harbor when I stepped aboard for the first time afloat. Nothing belied Dad's difficulty earlier, including launching the paddle wheeler off the lowboy trailer, across the river at the public landing, and getting her to where she was now tied. My folks renamed the stern wheeler for themselves, Marge and Jess, the Marges. We're gonna put my brothers on it. I think we had Bob, Dick, and I, Margie X, Dombo Dick, that's what it would have been. That would have been a sign painter's nightmare. The former Shangri-La was a 38-foot wooden paddle wheeler houseboat, hand-built in 1947, from plans made popular in the 1930s, which you could still buy. A 35 horsepower, 4-cylinder flathead gasoline engine from a Durant automobile powered the chain-driven stern wheel. The scow-bow hull and the graceful cabin were painted as white as any steamboat. The red window and molding trim matched the paddle wheel. My mother, Anna Margaret, not my father, Jess, was a parent who stoked the fire for my love of the river. Dad went along with it as he realized it was good, righteous family fun and entertainment and loved by us all. What amazes me still, after more than 60 passing years, is knowing that Mother prepared sumptuous meals for both them and 3 hungry boys on a single burner hot plate, aboard a rocking and rolling riverboat. I still had the mirror and the 2 lanterns in the back. They served on 2 or 3 of my other boats. Oh, that's us eating it. On one of those now distant days, our father brought home a disappointingly overweight big dog. Still, after he started running and playing with us boys, the dog quickly trimmed up and became our constant companion. Soon, we realized how much we loved this old dog named Patrick. We just called him Patty Boy. But he turned out to be a natural river dog who loved following along with us to the river. Dad and I are seen in a hand-built wooden yawl belonging to Tex, the harbor master of the Covington Boat Harbor, who became another early river mentor. Or, as I wrote in The River, that book of mine is there, Tex Kitching, a veteran riverman who once decked for the Union Bars line, was, as I soon found, receptive to a gangly teenage boy eager to help around the harbor and willing to work for free. Before long, I spent more time with Tex than with my family aboard the Marquess. Here, Bob and I, my brother Bob, are seen helping Dad convert an old tire into a rubber bumper. Moored close alongside our boat is a dirty hand-built shanty boat, complete with all sorts of plunder, some floating, some piled atop the roof. That was the home of the harbor master, Tex Kitching, his wife Joy, and their toddler son. I always loved that shanty boat. Like the old song says, we thought those days would never end, but they did. Not only did those glorious halcyon days of summer end, but nearly 6 decades have passed since my folks sold the Marquess to some yokel who trailered the boat to Williamstown Lake. While entertaining a lady friend with the paddle wheel running full ahead on a straight rudder, the boat hit the far shore. Stowing in a bow plank, the paddle wheeler quickly stole us on the bottom of the lake, where local delinquents eventually set the hulk afire. I can't understand what happened, the old boy later related. I had her set on automatic pilot. Which, of course, there's no such thing. I began steamboating aboard the steamer Avalon during the 1959-1960 seasons after graduating from Holmes High School in the lower half of the class of '59. Gradually free of that burden, finally free of that burden, my sights were set on working on the river. But in those days, decent paying jobs on towboats, shoving barges, were cherished. And it took someone with connections to land mine. Captain Red Slicker, my only river contact, disappointingly revealed he had no pull within the towing industry, but promised inroads to employment on the Avalon. Captain Ernest E. Wagner, the charismatic master of the Avalon, was one person in full charge of the 45-year-old steamboat. Whenever he was afoot, the crew worked more harmoniously in a cadence that hummed to the rhythm of the master's presence. Cap was about 6'6", about 275, and quite a man. Captain Ernest, although many faces in this crew picture remained familiar, by the time I joined the Avalon crew in June of the same year, '59, most of those in the group shot had found replacements. None of the women shown here on the boat worked on the boat by then, but I did know a couple of the ladies pretty well after being on there. Her husbands were on there. Somewhere on the upper Mississippi River, and it looks suspiciously to me like it's Lock 15, Lock 15, upper Mississippi River, people know it right away. Notice the port stern line. Now, two fellas down there. Where two deckhands are seen doing what deckhands do in a lock. That skinny kid on the right, tending the stern line, that's me. This is the only known photograph of yours truly at work aboard the Avalon. Beside me is Leroy Bateau, manning the bumper or possum, as we call the woven rope cushioning device. Nope. Either one of us are wearing life jackets. Most of you younger people today would say, "Oh, you don't have any life jackets on." No, we didn't. Rarely did we ever wear them. Minutes before this photograph of a white tablecloth charter in Louisville was taken, I was standing on the bow. For some unremembered reason, I left for my room while the moment was immortalized. That's mate Red Wilkie holding on the heel block with his right arm. That's Red, that's Red. And Blackie the Watchman in a white shirt over the Reds. Right there. I was right in the middle, I guess, but I hung around. Captain John Edgerton was 89, and I was 17 when we worked together in 1959. He became a licensed pilot in 1889. Captain Edgerton took an early liking to me and always asked for my assistance when he needed help posting a letter or toting his grip to the bus station whenever he swapped positions with another pilot once he ran out of territory on his license. For all my help, he paid well. $1 for each trip when my wages were $19 a week, plus a cot and 3 hots. We had 4 packed in a little room right between the boilers. Most people today wouldn't want to live like that, but I just thought it was close to heaven as I've gotten in a long time. My pay stayed in the purser's office to go toward college in the autumn, so those dollars were my only spending money. Whenever the Avalon played Cincinnati, its home port, the skipper was Captain Arthur J. Red Slicker. Captain Red, as he's better known, relieved the regular master, Captain Ernest E. Wagner, who took off whenever the Avalon was home. My dad quickly became friends with Captain Slaker, who invited my father and me to ride in the pilot house. At the same time, Mother enjoyed the riverboat ride astride a comfortable couch on the starboard side of the Texas deck by the chimney, while my two younger brothers explored the rest of the boat. Here's Captain Red on the left and Wes Doss again. You saw him before on the first Island Queen. Were pilots aboard the Avalon in 1960, the last year the excursion steamer operated under that name. Excuse me there, I have a bad case of dry mouth from something to deal with. Oh, here's Captain Lord Campbell Hawley, Captain Doc Hawley they called him, began as calliope player on the Avalon in 1952 in Charleston, West Virginia. His hometown, when Captain Wagner needed someone to play that infernal racket-making contraption. Right? Right. And commanded almost every steamboat operating, and he commanded almost every steamboat operating in the last half of the 20th century. Captain Doc regrettably died just over a year ago. This is how the Avalon looked in 1952 when we became intimately involved. She's tied up at the bight of Evansville Bend on the Lower Ohio River. Gliding across milky waters, the Avalon appears ghost-like in a reoccurring, fitful dream on a restless summer night. I do a lot of steamboating between the sheets, and I mean, when I go to bed at night, I go boating again. Sometimes I go to bed early, just get back on the boat. Robert Lawler was best known on the river as preacher. When I met him the first year, I was 17, and he was 82, perhaps more, but certainly not less. He was short, but had hard muscles. He was hard muscled from a lifetime of steamboat chores. His skin, light dark, Spanish leather, complemented a pair of bright, shining eyes, and his hair was tight, tiny ringlets of cotton. His thick white mustache sparkled with an amber jewel or two from the generous quid of Kentucky plug chewing tobacco, always present in his jaw. Mrs. Raleigh May Lawler was a steamboat cook of renown. She made the best possum stew on the river. That's a good stew. The James Richardson steam engines shown here are older than the boat, now operating as a Bell Louisville in its 110th year. I invite all of you to give them a call down there and book your ride on the steamer Bell Louisville. It's one of the two. That and Natchez and New Orleans are the only two operating steamboats left on the river. I'm pretty sure of them. Ed Smith and I had a first contact aboard the excursion steamer Steamboat, the steamer Avalon, when I was a forlorn 17-year-old kid sitting on a wooden bench by the bow waiting for the befuddled chief engineer to finish breakfast while my disapproving father glared from a family car parked ashore. That's the last place he wanted me to be. Amid all my misgivings and anxieties of my first day employed as a cabin boy on the boat, two veteran black boatmen came around the knuckle forward the cabin of the boiler room, and I heard the conversations they directed at me. "Who's that white boy?" "I don't know, but he won't last long." And many years later, when I was captain of Delta Queen, and Ed and Bub were firemen on the Delta Queen, I said, "Hey, you remember that day?" "Yeah, we remember." They were firemen. They were Bubba Chin and Ed Smith, those two fellows, who kept the fires burning beneath the boilers of the steam-powered steamboat. Before the end of that summer, Ed and Bubba became treasured lifelong friends and mentors and remained for the rest of our lives together. This was a window card advertising the celebrated charter aboard the Avalon by a young West Virginia high school boy named Robert James Hammond, who would one day become a legendary steamboat captain in his own right. That's the Avalon docked alongside the Sprague, the largest steam towboat ever built, 1861. The Avalon's pristine dance floor, a world into its own. We as employees of the boat weren't allowed to walk across the floor. We had to walk along the edges. Did not walk them, and still that way on the bell, I guess. The Avalon original steering wheel, they still have it to this day on the Bella. Though it has steam assist, using this wheel, I hand steered the steamboat during one of the great steamboat races a few years ago, without any steam, hand steered. It actually steered easy. The Avalon was seen here underway sometime in 1960. In 1962, with the end of another era, the Avalon was sold to Cincinnati and become the Bella Lowell, which operates today in its 110th year. That was the best thing that could have ever happened to her. It's a picture I took from Lawrenceburg, just about ready to go over the 275 bridge about a year or two ago. This is taken in 2014 aboard the Belle, and these fellows are, or were, the last known surviving Avalon crew members. That's Captain Doc Hawley in a brown jacket, John Corky Bickle, who's an attorney in Iowa, who is also on the board of the National Steamboat Museum up there in Dubuque, and me. Since then, Captain Hawley's died, so Corky and I are probably the only two known. I'm sure there's got to be other ones, but because they had such a tremendous turnover in that crew. But we're the only ones that admit to it, I guess. Here's a look at what goes on during paddle wheel maintenance. Looks like they need a lot of maintenance here. I see a tree up there. And that's a Bill's wooden paddle wheel. That's the first, no, it's actually the second paddle wheel. Margette's was my first paddle wheel. And this was my last. This is a little boat I had called the Clyde. And that's the wheel, the way I reconstructed, and it, museum quality. This little wheel could have been in any river museum, totally authentic. The woman that bought my boat tore it off and put the dumbest looking thing you ever saw in there. Beautiful wheel. So after graduating from college at 65, I started working on the Delta Queen for the summer before enlisting in the United States Air Force. And that year we saw the Delta Queen was in St. Paul that year, 65. And I never wore that hat while on active duty. When I was in officer training school, we all had to have one. It's called a Maury Luxembourg. Never expensive. On active duty, if you wore one of those, that people, got put your finger at you and laugh at you. Mostly, or just a field cap. Following 4 years of military service, I returned to the Delta Queen as an unlicensed second mate. After Captain Hawley left the Queen for the Bella Lowell that year, in April, Captain Wagner had me performing the duties of first mate with one of the pilots who was off his territory, as they called it. Wasn't employed actually as a pilot, but he was on there carrying the license. He had the license, I did the work. So I guess I was probably the only unlicensed first lead that Delta Queen's ever had, as far as I know. That was also the iconic Save the Delta Queen year, which had to do with safety at sea law, which said that no vessel operating out of U.S. waters could have any part of the vessel made of combustible materials if they carried more than 50 passengers. And that's something that still plagues the Delta Queen to this day, among many other things. But that was really an iconic year. It was a real hoop-de-doo, kind of a celebratory year that we had. Nothing beats a colorful sunset to add to a photograph. It's a Delta Queen heading downriver somewhere. There's Captain Roddy Hammond, I mentioned before, with the placard. Joined the spectacle with bringing the Delta Queen alongside the Sprague at Vicksburg, Mississippi. Roddy later became a favorite captain of the Belle of Louisville and the steamer Natchez before he was brutally murdered in New Orleans in November 1995. He still found some gun. He was one of the greatest people in the world. There's the Delta Queen crew in 1970. If you look closely, you can see that she still has canvas decks. Decks are covered in canvas. Right after I gave a talk up at the Barringer Crawford Museum, I got a phone call from Ray Wanstroth, former deckhand that I hadn't heard from in a long, long time. Called my home to reminisce about our mutually shared long ago adventures. Anyway, Ray, he's over toward the right. That was neat how they found it. There's some of my motley crew aboard the Delta Queen on the bow, right below the Huey P. Long Bridge above New Orleans. Note the two top guys, the highest up in the air. Black gentleman named Bobby Sykes and a white fellow. This is another picture of them chlorinating a paddle wheel. Paddle wheel, they say a rolling stone never gathers any moss, but a turning paddle wheel sure does. It gets coated with green, thick green moss. And the way we kill it is we spray it with chlorine. The wheel turns and takes it all off. But today, you know, people, if I had posted this picture today on the internet, they, oh my gosh, where's the life jackets? Where's the safety rails? Where's the handrails? What's the ocean going to do? Well, ocean don't have anything to say about it. It's the Coast Guard. But today, if I was back up there like with these guys, I would have a life jacket on. Though in those days, I didn't wear one either. We always say, well, why don't you have a life jacket? We'd say, well, it would hamper us trying to get up around in that wheel, climbing around it. I said, the only good thing, and they said, what if you fall? I said, you only fall once. And the only thing the life jacket would be good for is help you find your body easier. We generally, in those days, didn't wear life jackets. There's Captain Wagner, he's on a film commanding me to lift a 52-foot, 3-ton swinging stage. What a thrill it was to hear Cap call my name. I'd rather be Captain Wagner's mate any day than captain of any other boat. Just to be working with a big cap. This boy's at heart, but that young fellow in the background wearing terrible gray pants was the same age now as those boys were in the picture. That's Captain Albert Sidney Kelly on the left, and it's Captain Tommy Yoder. On camera, see, Rand Cochran, a legendary newspaper photographer, caught my motor as a mean old mate of the Delta Queen. Some of you here know his son Randy, and probably knew Rand himself, but he was a photographer quite a bit with the Delta Queen in those days. Here I am on camera with Richard Symington, right to my left, Betty Blake in the middle, facing me, and Professor O.J. Quimby, who brought the calliope to the Delta Queen. Mr. Quimby, they call him Professor. Professor Quimby was Amelia Earhart's friend. He knew Amelia Earhart well. While I commanded the Delta Queen on a local charter, you see me going up the river there, Captain Betty, we called her, Captain Betty Blake, was captured in his classic pose in a Mount Adams condo overlooking the river. And this picture is by Bill Muster, president of Delta Queen Steamboat Company. Franklin Miles here was the first black steward on the boat. Remember that Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated only 2 years before this photograph was taken. This is a Bill Muster photo. HW stands for head waiter. Robert Davis is seen serving the Stephen Hinckley's. Robert was from an old line of Delta Queen employees. His father was a head waiter, maitre d' before him. His Uncle John was a bartender. His mother was a maid, a head maid. His sister was a maid, and I don't know how many brothers and sisters worked on the Delta Queen. And they also controlled all the goodies aboard below deck. There was gambling on the boat, but that was for crew only, no passengers. Robert got all of the crafts. He was a house. They also had the bootleg whiskey that could be bought aboard for the crew. It was called, there you go, Boone Country, not Boone County, Boone Country. And on the bottle it said, aged and used cooperage for not more than 30 days. So they would buy this by the big bottles, put it in the little shorties, halfway, fill up with water, and charge as much as one of the big bottles probably cost if you bought it on short. But anyway, they were interesting. There's Ed Smith again. He came to Avalon, Captain Wagner in 62. Captain Wagner was also known as a musical master of the Delta Queen. He's seen here playing the knucklebones with Vic Tucker and his parents, Alice and Guy, in the background. They were former vaudeville entertainers. And when Vic was a baby, when Guy and Alice had their act on stage, they put Vic, his little kid, in a great big old box of some sort, and keep him in there while they were out there. And he grew up and he played, I think, 18 or 19 musical instruments professionally well. Captain Handsome Harry Hamilton eases the Delta Queen alongside the Sprague. As a young man, Captain Harry actually piloted the Sprague as one of his first jobs when it belonged to Standard Oil Company of Louisiana. Captain Harry Loudon here, steering the boat with pipe in his jaw there, is a native son of Boone County. He was born in Rabbit Hash. You all heard of Rabbit Hash, I'm sure. Harry is remembered as one of the most beloved officers of Delta Queen. I soon found from Harry, not long after I got on there, that his mother-in-law, Minnie Sanders Rush, was my first cousin, 2 generations removed. We're all from down in Carroll County. Sanders, Kentucky's our big claim to fame down that way. I was always happy to spend some time with Captain Wagner. I always worked opposite. So if he was a captain on the front watch, I was a mate on the back watch. If he was off, and got to be when he'd get off the boat, then I would take his place. So I didn't get a whole lot of time with Cap, but I sure enjoyed every minute I could. That was most every minute. That's my brother Bob Sanders, and on the left, back in his college days, we were departing on the last cruise of 1970. We didn't know if the boat would ever run again. Bob was a good boat, and he worked on that boat on the Delta Queen as a striker in the engine room and also as a watchman, but he chose to become an attorney. That's the last landing of the Delta Queen in 1970 in New Orleans. We had just come down from St. Paul, St. Louis, down the river, all kinds of hoop-de-doo, and the boat was, this was to say the Delta Queen year. We didn't know if the boat would run again after we tied up. So we snagged the line here, had a hard offshore wind, plus we had big eddy working there, and it looks like we got a fish on the hook. Eventually we reeled her in and ducked her off, and a good landing. Thankfully, the Delta Queen was saved at the last minute. They laid us all off. We went home, and while I was home, the news came late December. It was saved by a writer to a bill by Senator Marlowe Cook, who attached the bill to a one that had to pass where they owed employees some money and they had to pay them. And so the Delta Queen was saved at the last minute from becoming extinct at the end of the 70th season. Marlowe Cook is also the man who bought the Bella Avalon that became the Bella my old boat, and still runs today. I don't think Marlowe Cook gets the recognition that he so rightly deserves on the river. But he was well known. He's in the, I believe he's in the Hall of Fame for it though. So with the Queen saved, I reported Avondale Shipyard in the spring of '71, where $1 million makeover was made to the boat, transforming it. And that's when $1 million was $1 million. You get a lot of work done for $1 million today. Then that was an impressive amount of money in 1971. This is what she looked at like coming out of the shipyard, all freshly painted, wheel rebuilt, all that stern splashboard back here where it says Delta Queen, the 2 portholes, the flags in mine. I had all those flags put up on the roof. I had that crown put up on the chimney. Anyway, look at the chimney, and that's a Bill Mustard. 1972, that's when I got my master's ticket. That's, I became alternate master of the Delta Queen with Captain Wagner. That was a happy moment when I went up to the Coast Guard, signed up. Returning to Cincinnati, I was the one up on the wing bridge as a master in charge. Cap had to get off. First time I ever ran captain of her. The fellow in the crowd waving a 2-handed salute. Hands like this. That's Lloyd Ostendorf. He was quite an artist. These are some pictures of the Ulsters of Delta Queen, 1971, that he drew. Mark Twain Lounge was a favorite after hours watering hole on the boat for passengers and crew. And this is from a film on the front row, around the front of the bar, and the fellow standing, the tall fellow, that's Jim Boone, Captain Fred Way, Captain C.W. Stoll, and Richard and Mrs. Symington, Paul, Paul Romberg was a bartender. and that's his wife on to his left wing. Down on the bows, where the crew liked to congregate because it was cool, and the stage was a favorite place to hang out. It's still way out. It still would be today if a boat was running. Here's Red Rooster, the fellow standing on the right. Red Rooster was really named Louis Bayless. He was a deckhand on the boat. One time he came on the Delta Queen carrying a sack, and Captain Wagner always had somebody on the gate watching. Cap liked that job, and he knew who was coming back and forth on the boat. And here comes Louis Bayless with his bag, and you know all the rest of the crew were all standing around watching. And Wagner says, Louis, what do you got? What do you got in that sack? He said, I ain't got nothing, Cap. Come over here and let me see what you got in there. So Cap just bends and looks, he puts his hand down like this, and he pulls up a big bottle of Red Rooster wine. Everybody around there, of course, saw that. And from that day forward, he was Red Rooster. He had guys like Gray Eye, Emo, and different names, and everybody earned those names. That's Captain Cal Benefield. He's a native of Madison, Indiana. Cal started on a little ferry boat down there, and he was on the Gordon C. Green before he came onto the Delta Queen. I worked for Cal, was quite a guy. It's Chief Cal, Cap Wagner, and Steward Ed Gallagher. They're peeking around. They're in the Orleans room, which is a dining room, which became the stage area, entertainment area after the meals were over. And it looks like Ed Gallagher's all gussied up here for some kind of entertainment for the passengers. And here's my buddy Ed Dimler. Like he's just loafing, but he's not. He's just sitting there waiting for Captain Wagner to yell, let her go. As soon as he did that, everything just started moving. He'd jump up, untied and shackled the line, moved it down. You had to help the crew. You just can't throw it down. You got to roll it down to the water so the crew could pull it in, jump up on the stage. And that's a picture of Mississippi on the ass and get out of there. Here I am, decades have come and gone. That young lady's there in striped pants. In front of me is my sister Mary. She's now the grandmother many times over. And Ed Delmer, and I mentioned before in the background, kind of tidying up the line. Kevin, my first full command, exclusively was the PA Denny in Charleston, West Virginia. My boss, Lawson Hamilton, painted everything red, white, and blue. Of course, it was 1976, and it was a perfect time for him to paint everything red, white, and blue. Bicentennial year. Everything included the boat, his Jet Ranger chopper, his King Air turboprop airplane, even his trucks and bulldozers and few little tanks at the mining operations all boasted the same colors as the national flag. Photo is us windbound in Charleston, West Virginia. And if you look at the paddle wheel, notice how much it takes to just keep it on the bank. Our wind was howling. It was howling up the river. It just lifted that boat, pushed it sideways up the river. I had a whole boatload of passengers. Most of them were members of the S&T, Sons and Daughters of Pioneer Rivermen, and they had a banquet that night. But all the boats that we had to land against, they had the stern wheel regatta there at the same time, a lot of other little paddle wheels. And we had to land into the bank like that, not flatways. And it just was impossible with that wind. So I saw a little clump of sand up there, and I ran for the sand, shoved her in on the sand, and run her head about half ahead. So that night, they all had plenty to talk about at the meeting, at the banquet, and Fred Way used this on one of his stories in his magazine. I I was MG Transport, first steersman for MG Transport. J. Page Hayden here, and that was the first of quite a few towboats I worked on. One of the great legends of the river, Captain John Beatty, and I shared many river adventures. Captain John was hard to get along with sometimes. Mike Fletcher right here laughing. I had a bar. I had a recycling center at one time, and the bar there. Mike came in the bar. He says, "Well, Mike, what are you doing here in Covington?" I said, "Well, I was down there with Captain Beatty. We were trying to raise some boards, but he ran off all the crew. He fired everybody, but me, and he don't have anybody to work. So he's trying to find people, and I had the night off." But that's the way John was. But you know what? One person in history, I think, in some ways, could, with his character and the type of man he was, I think he could almost compare him to Captain General Patton, General George Patton. He was a tough, honest, decent human being, but he wasn't always the easiest guy to get along with. In fact, last time I worked for him, Ms. Beatty called and said the captain is in a lot of trouble trying to get a boat up from meet him in Memphis, if you could meet him in Memphis. And I came on there, I expected to be on there a week, maybe. Got on there, and it turned out a month to get the boat back up to right at Beatty's Landing, right there, the side of Markland Dam. And took us 3 days to shove around New Madrid, being 18 miles. Took us 3 days to shove 18 miles. So I get back at the boat. I'm up in the pilot house with Captain John, and the deckhands couldn't get the line out. I said, "I'll go get it, John." I dove out of the tree, jumped in the tree, off the bow of the big high-raised bow, grabbed the line and dogged the line off. And then by that time, my rider was there to pick me up. And so I went to my room, and my clothes, you know, wearing them for a month, what little I brought, I just took the pillow slip off and put all my dirty clothes in the pillow slip, expecting, you know, to return it back to Captain Beatty. But I didn't, and we got the chance. Next thing I didn't hear what we call the stern wheel telegraph on the river, people talking. Captain Beatty was saying I stole all the laundry off the boat. I think that's typical, but yeah, I loved him. I'm real proud that I was able to spend a lot of time with John. That's my first gambling boat, the Diamond Lady. It's rotting away down behind President's Island in Memphis, Tennessee. A beautiful boat. It's a twin to the Belle of Cincinnati. This is the Emerald Lady, which is now the Belle of Cincinnati. Couldn't find a good picture of the Emerald Lady itself, but I found a great image of it here on this Emerald Lady coin. I know you're all familiar with the Belle, that belonged to the Bernsteins. I was captain on the Players River Boat Casino, #1 in Metropolis, Illinois. It was a beautiful boat. Built down in Louisiana, Jennings, Louisiana. I was captain of the Grand Victoria I in Elgin, Illinois. Big faux side wheeler. Probably this is the largest boat I was ever captain on. And we were in the little tiny Fox River, and the boat was very maneuverable. Great time. Then they wanted me to come down here, and I was 16 years right down this road down here. Across from Rabbit Hatch is a Grand Victoria, now called the Rising Star Casino, where I was senior captain for 16 years, went that fast, just like a moment. Then when there was a lot of squabble between people over here in Boone County, especially down around Rabbit Hatch area, and people over on the Rising Sun. You know, a lot of people thought the boat coming in would ruin they're kind of Boone, their home down the river there in Rabbit Hatch area. So when I went over to Rising Sun, I heard the rumors were going around, don't trust that captain, he's from Rabbit Hatch. So I guess it worked both ways. That was a great boat. I had a couple, actually 3 really great private boats. It's not that big one, it's that little guy. And that was a beautiful, beautiful boat. I called it the Sunfish. It was built as a towboat, and actually it's still towing today. It's towing for, it's actually in the towing business. This was my last boat, the Clyde. Here we're seeing it the 100th anniversary of the Ballalola in 2014. That's Captain Doc Hawley there, who's since passed away. That's a terrific boat. It's somewhere down around Nashville, Knoxville. There's my book. It's in there like Prego, in much more detail than my fumbling around up here today. My recently released book, thanks to Mrs. Judy Claves, the former editor of the Kentucky Post, and now the Northern Kentucky Tribune, who is not a stranger to this organization, to this group. We have some books here tonight. Otherwise, they're available online at kycpsj.com, which stands for stands for Kentucky Center for Public Service and Journalism. To get one, they're available here tonight. And thank you for inviting me tonight. My special thanks goes to Steve Conrad, and set this up, and Tom Schiffer, who kind of put the bug in here, I believe. And this has been a Rambling Riverboat production. Thank you.